It's your weekly breakaway for fun conversations on pro cycling and so much more. Join us as we go beyond the slipstream. I'm Matt Harper, and together with my brother Justin, we'll do deep-ish dives on bike races, movies, bands, and all manner of shiny pop cultural objects. Oh, and did I mention bike races? We're kind of obsessed. Allez! Hello and welcome to Beyond the Slipstream. I'm Matt and this is my brother Justin, and today in our first segment we'll unpack the action in the midweek cobbled classic that serves as the appetizer to Holy Week, Dwars, Tour of Vlaanderen. On the women's side, it served up a first-time winner via solo breakaway and a milestone win at that. On the men's side, well, we'll get to it. For segments 2 and 3, we'll get into the main course for the weekend, the Ronde von Vlaanderen, aka the Tour of Flanders. The men set out first, and unfortunately in terms of our hopes for an exciting finish, we got what many people expected, a solo breakaway from a recent winner that left us with just a sprint for second to get excited about. On the women's side, we got an exciting finish at least, even if the result was the one we all expected. Nonetheless, we'll break down all the cobbled up Belgian racing just ahead. And of course, no Beyond the Slipstream podcast would be complete without a bumpy little ride in the Broom Wagon. Allez! Please note, this segment contains spoilers. If you wish to remain unspoiled, please jump ahead to segment 2. Dwars door Vlaanderen, the final spring classic before the Ronde van Vlaanderen, aka the Tour of Flanders, served up two beautiful finishes this year. In the 14th running of the women's event, we were treated to a first win from a great champion as Elisa Longoborghini of Team UAE ADQ made a powerful solo move with around 26 Ks to go and was never seen again. Meanwhile, in the 79th running of the men's race, two Americans and two Belgians battled in a lopsided match over the final 55 Ks of the race, a 3-on-1 affair that saw the solo EF Education Easy Post rider Nielsen Paulus somehow manage to get the best of the Visma Lisa Bike trio that he was away with. Paulus stunned the cycling world proper by beating a beleaguered and downtrodden Wout van Aert at his own game, passing by him with authority in the last 20 meters before the line to take the unlikeliest of sprint wins. Justin, this men's race was so compelling that we're going to dedicate our entire Team Bus episode this week to a detailed analysis of the race. That being the case, let's start today with our thoughts on that glorious win for the women by Italian champion Elisa Longoborghini. Do you feel that this was the quote-unquote revenge she claimed it was for her heartbreak in Siena 2 weeks ago?
I think it was an absolute statement win from her. I think she came into that race wanting to say, look, I don't know what you guys think, but I am the dominant rider in this peloton now. And I think that she absolutely came out and made that statement in, echoing fashion, because I think every rider in the peloton heard it, and I think it bodes well for what we're going to see throughout the rest of this year from her.
Yeah. I guess what I was kind of going with is like, does this make up for the loss in MSR? Which I don't think it does.
No,
I mean,
don't
MSR is a monument. This is just a spring classic, so I'm sure it felt good. I'm sure it reminded her that her loss in MSR was only just barely. I mean, she mistimed it in the smallest of ways. I think there's no question right now that ELB is the best classics rider in the women's peloton. Just in terms of all around, sure, she's not going to beat Lorena Vivas in a sprint, but as a one-day racer, there's no one better, in my opinion. It's really going to be interesting watching how things play out at the Tour of Flanders later today. But she is the real deal. This was her 50th race victory, big round number there, and kind of interesting that it's exactly half of what Lorena Vivas just notched like a couple of days ago as well. But she did it. She really didn't need a whole lot of help from her team to do it. She's the best out there when it comes to one days.
She can get out by herself and just keep that momentum going. I think it's interesting with her to see this evolution over the last especially like the last 2 years, but you know, her leaving and going to UAE, you know, it's like it's given her a new confidence, almost a swagger per se, and I love it. All right, like I think it's great. I think it's great for the competition. I think it's great for entertainment as far as watching it, and I think that she is. I don't know, man. I got this like feeling with her that she's got a huge season in front of her right now. She seems
Yeah, I
strong.
really
I don't know.
I hope so. I mean, last year, it wasn't like she had a poor season or anything like that. I mean, she won the women's Giro, the Girodon, which is pretty huge considering she's an Italian. That's the Italian Grand Tour. Um, I liked her on Lidl Trek, the nice Italian team. I mean, she sort of made sense there, and yet at the same time, boom, she's on to bigger and better. She's on UAE, which is, got a lot of dollars behind it. And while she doesn't necessarily have a super strong team in support of her, I'd say, um, in a lot of ways, it kind of doesn't matter because a lot of her wins are done on her own. And this is a perfect example of it where she just kind of picked her way. She worked her way up, from the peloton up to the front group, and then once she got that front group, boom, she went straight past them, and soloed to victory over 20, 25, 26 Ks. Um, and you don't need a super strong team around you to take wins like that. Um, she still got that Italian champions jersey at the new team, so she's looking amazing. And she is on form and crushing it. She is, I don't feel like she goes into any race convinced that she can only manage second or third place. I mean, I think everything she gets into, she knows I'm in here with a chance to win this thing. I'm wily, I'm experienced, and I got a lot of power in the legs, and I'm gonna go win this thing. So it's inspiring to watch. I love her. I love her so much.
All right, I wanna, because I didn't see some of this stuff. Tell me about this giant stuffed horse.
Yeah, well, a lot of my notes are from the aftermath or whatever. I'm not exactly sure. I assume that um, the region where this thing goes has something to do with horses or something. Because honestly, I didn't look into it, but I just think it's funny that the prize on the podium is a stuffed horse that's like almost as big as like a mini pony. Um, I would not be surprised to learn that some winner somewhere has like gotten onto that horse, and just posed like looking while they were riding it. It's funny. Um, but yeah, if we're going to talk about some of the podium stuff and everything, uh, I loved how pre-podium they were stuffed together onto a little bench. Just that immediately made me think of MSR 2 years ago, where it was who was it? It was Vanderpool, Ghana. I know Ghana was one of them. I think Wout Van Aert was it. Wout Van Aert, Vanderpool, and Ghana that were all smashed onto that little chair there, and just it looked so funny. And they were
And it
doing the
was
same
like,
thing.
if I remember what you're talking about, it's like ELB was on the left, and then Balsamo was in the middle, and Capecchi was on the right. Right? Is that what you're talking about?
And yes, and so ELB and Balsamo were like they're both Italians, former teammates. They're intimately familiar with each other, and they were just having the time of their lives. It was so sweet. And meanwhile, Capecchi's over there, just like kind of with her head turned the other direction on her phone, just like I'm so over this. Like, get me the f off of this bench, get off of this podium. I'm ready to go focus on the next goal. But it was really cute the way that they were. The way that they were carrying on back there. So they get on the podium. She gets the massive stuffed horse, and then like they hand her the giant champagne bottle. And I noticed maybe it wasn't, but it looked to me like there was a GoPro on that champagne bottle, um, like attached to the neck of it. I mean, it could have been some kind of safety device or something. I'm not sure, but it looked like a GoPro. Which, if
If
that is the
that's the
case, I
case,
would
that means that
love to
like
find
there's
that
some
footage.
footage of that somewhere, which would be so cool.
I know. So, yeah, a fact-finding mission that we need to go on. But I tell you what, that was one beautiful-looking poem. You had Longo Borghini in the Italian champions jersey. You had Kopecky in the world champs jersey, and then you had Balsamo there in like that beautiful Lidl Trek
Yeah.
kit. And it was just like the aesthetics were pretty great. So,
Yes, they were.
um, yeah, great race and a great setup um, for
Tour of
Flanders.
Flanders. Hmm.
So why don't we give a little bit of attention to the men's race, and then as I mentioned in the intro, we're going to be diving much deeper on that race in our team bus episode that'll drop on Wednesday this week.
Yeah.
But yeah, so basically we saw an incredible job done by Visma Lisa Bike, who usually last couple of years, this time of year, this is their time. They've been slaying for a couple of years, and it's been considerably less of a joyride for them here this year. Um, but boy, they nail it perfectly in this race. They put at first it was a four-man break. They had Eduardo Affini, the giant engine, who really kind of set up their trio that went away. So he pulled them off of the front, and it was Matteo Jorgensen, Tish Benut, and Wout van Aert, um, and with I don't know 20 something k to go, Nielsen Palace got attached with these guys, and
Well, if you remember, it was actually Nielsen was in the breakaway that was ahead. They were in the peloton. Those four riders broke away with Affini leading them out, and eventually, once they gassed Affini, they were pretty close to bridging across. They bridged across to that bigger group of like 8 riders, and then from there, they whittled that group down to where Nielsen Palace was the only one that was able to hang with the 3 of them. So they dropped those other 7 guys. The only one that was able to keep up with that pace that they were trying to make was Powless. So eventually, when you get to about 25 or 27K, something like that, you're down to essentially the 4 of them: Benut, Wout, Van Aert, Jorgensen, and Powless. And that's so, they had been out, like, Nielsen had been out there. Like, he had been out there doing a lot of work already. And so it's very interesting that even after they came in and were pushing that really huge amount of power through, that he was able to maintain and keep on them, which really shows how his form was. Like, I think, like, and I'm sure we'll dive more into it, but he was on great form that day. And there's these little moments like that where he's able to keep up with those guys and the pace that they're trying to make, because they're obviously really, really cooking. It's a testament to how good he was that day, because he was the only rider out of a group of a bunch of good riders that was able to keep up with them.
this is another one of those examples that really, really show how professional cycling is a team sport and how it works.
Yes.
And Nielsen Palace had to be a one-man team out there basically, and as good as his legs were and are right now, and they definitely were since he beat Wout van Aert in a sprint, he absolutely played this thing to perfection. He was a chess master
Yes.
out there, because he had to give them just enough help to convince them to go for the sprint. You know what I mean? Like, but
It was such a fine line, because
it was just perfect. It was masterful the way, because he spent a lot of time on the back, but on pretty regular intervals he would pull through and grab a turn on the front. Trusting himself.
I think he knew that he couldn't do it by himself. All right, he needed them to be able to get to the end, and they needed to know that he could hang with them. So it's a masterclass in tactics against a masterclass in tactics, because the Visma tactic of dropping everybody in the race. We joked around 2 weeks ago about how, Pogacar, to win, races like MSR, is going to need to, put a team together and shoot off the front. And here 2 weeks later, Visma is actually doing that to try to lock down this race. And the irony is that you have another guy that is like doing those counter moves, and, doing these counter, to this also great tactic, but he's out there by himself. He doesn't have a teammate to help him. So, chapeau to him, because holy shit, like, to me, his race was so much better than everybody else's race in that sense. And look, those three riders rode an amazing race to perfection. They executed their tactic to perfection. They just failed in those last moments.
Yep. Yeah. Well, we're gonna spend a lot more time discussing it. So we'll wrap it up here. So it was a wonderful victory by the American Nielsen Palace, and as we like to call him on this podcast, my best friend. So thank you, Nielsen, for one of the great moments of the 2025 year so far. And with that, we will be right back. Please note, this segment contains spoilers. If you wish to remain unspoiled, please jump ahead to segment 3. The Ronde von Vlaanderen, aka the Tour of Flanders, is arguably the biggest and most prestigious of the 5 monument races, the biggest of the one-day classics in pro cycling. This year, on the men's side, the 109th edition was set to be a showdown between the winners of the last 3 editions, Alpecin de Koninck's Mathieu van der Poel, a 3-time winner and defending champion, and Tadej Pogacar of Team UAE Emirates, the 2023 winner, current world champion, and arguable GOAT of the men's peloton. But it was not to be. In the end, the legs did the talking as Pog threw in an attack over the final ascent of the Paterberg, and Van der Poel, Visma Lease Bike's Wout van Aert, and Mads Pedersen and his Lidl Trek teammate Jasper Stuyven were unable to answer. Pog rode clear and stayed clear, steadily increasing his lead, which ended at over a minute in the end. Justin, were you surprised that MVDP did not put up more of a fight, given his 3 previous wins and incredible form this season so far?
Absolutely, especially considering, what we saw a couple weeks ago at MSR. It seemed that Pog clearly had his number today. Pog just never looked even fatigued, and there was just that point there towards that last attack where just Vanderbilt just couldn't keep up with him on the climb. And that's the difference in this race, is that those extremely steep, short, climbs just suit Pogacar so well to distance those guys. He just has some, like, it's just different for him on those, on that type of really, really hard climb.
Yeah. So Pog won in 2023. Did he race it again in 2024? Did he race it last year?
No.
So basically, Van der Poel hasn't beaten Pogacar in this race.
Correct.
Like, because Van der Poel won in 2022, and 2024, but Pog didn't race any of those. And Pog's beaten him both times that he did race him. Wow. Okay. No. Van der Poel beat Pog in 2020. That's right. That when he out sprinted him. So it'd be interesting to go back and see how it was that Pog ended up in sprinting against Van der Poel and didn't distance everybody back then. But then again, that was 2020. That was before Pog had won his first Tour de France and was still like a rider on the come up, I believe. Maybe I'm confusing things. Was that just like 2 years ago? I don't know. Should have looked into it more, but I think you're right. This course is most suited to him, and he made it count where he needed to. I don't know. It's pretty damn disappointing, to be honest.
I think you have to take it at its face value as, we are seeing something that's once in a generation. We'll look back on this years from now and be like, yeah, we watched all of those races where he dominated. I will say, watching his post-race interview and letting it be interrupted by his teammate, and, I got the feeling that, like, this guy's just a really good teammate too. It's really hard not to like him. While it makes the races boring, it's like you don't root against him. Like you're not like, no, I don't want him to win. It's like, oh, he's going to win again. So
yeah, it's just sucks to not have an exciting race to watch. It just seems like on the men's side, these just for the past like 2 years now, it's just like every damn one of these is just so boring. Like it's like you were saying earlier, there's much more parity on the women's side. I mean, in the men's side, it's just like we've got this handful of just generational riders in their own regards, and unless they're fighting it out together, we're just getting all these solo breakaways, and it's just boring, man. It's just not exciting, you
Well,
know.
and the sad thing is that at 35K, it was a much more exciting race. You know, there
So
were
exciting.
there were much more. The attacks were happening. They were definitely like playing the tactics. Visma had 3 riders. Like there was all of the they had all the ingredients of a really good race, and it just somehow he's able to put on these attacks where just nobody can hang. And I mean his power just in these certain moments is just so much better than these other riders.
Yeah, it's his power and the lesser the part that you don't think about as much, but which also really really contributes is the length of this race. It's like it's not just his power, but it's his power after they've been in the saddle for 5 hours,
Yeah.
and they hit the Paterberg again, they hit the Eau de Quermont again after 5 hours, and they're staring at that cobbled wall in front of them, and Pogačar is able in those moments in much the same way as Vanderpool, it seems, though not today, but they're able to just like summon some amazing amounts of power with all that fatigue in their legs. And at that point, nobody can stay with them. And that's why you end up with, 10 to 50 Ks of solo breaking away at the end of some of these races because it's just their stamina is through the roof as well. I mean, that's obviously what makes Pogačar such a great Grand Tour,
Yeah.
Grand Tour ride.
What what did you think about Wout in retrospect to earlier in the week's events?
I mean, it just fourth is just so perfect, so poetically perfect for Wow to have gotten in this race. It's just like fourth. You know what I mean? Fourth. Wout's fourth in this race is his second in Dwars Tour of Vlaanderen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just 1,000 miles away from anything. I don't know. The whole Wout Van Aert saga that we're going to be getting into in our Team Bus episode that we'll be releasing later this week is just so depressing to me. I don't even like to think about it. It just seems like, I mean, there's no question any longer about like who history will see as the greater of the two rivals, Van Aert or Vanderpool. I mean, Vanderpool is just way better than him, both in on road cycling and in cyclocross. I mean,
Yeah.
Vanderpool, let's not forget, he just got his seventh cyclocross world championship in a row. So there's no question in that regard. And now on the road, I mean, Wout Van Aert has one monument. Vanderpool's got 6 or something. I mean, it's just diminishing returns without Wout, and it's a big bummer, just because of the whole Belgian press, etc. We'll get into that
Yeah.
later, but yeah, I mean, they're just the fact that they once again had these 3 super strong Visma Lease bike riders there, Wout, Matteo, Tish, and just couldn't cobble anything together to get somebody onto the podium. It just
And
it's
I'm going to say
disappointing.
chapo to Tish. Another great day. Just putting in the work for his teammates. Guy's super strong. What a great team player to have on your in your stable, and just you're not doing anything with it. It's a bit disappointing.
Yeah, and I mean they didn't get anybody into the final chase group that had Wout van Aert, Mathieu van der Poel, Mads Pedersen, and Jasper Stuyven in it. And what do you notice amongst those 4 names? There's 2 teammates in there, and it's the guy who came in second. The guy
Yeah.
who did win the sprint was the one who had a teammate. Would it have been different if Matteo or Tish had somehow made that final group? Would it have been different for Wout? I kind of doubt it because Mads Pedersen has already demonstrated incredible form this spring, and Wout has not at all. So but maybe it gets him into third. Who knows?
Yeah.
Hard to imagine. Hard to imagine Wout beating Vanderpool in a sprint right now either. So, I don't know. It's that whole side of the thing is just very depressing.
How do you feel this sets up Paris Roubaix next weekend?
Battle between Pogacar and Vanderpool.
I mean, do you think that that's it? I
Be
mean,
anything else? Maybe Ghana sneaks back into the mix because it suits him a lot more. If you noticed, Ghana handily won the sprint for ninth or whatever when the main peloton came in.
yeah, I mean, I think if you take out the really steep climbs and make it more of an endurance race, it definitely suits Ghana, to be able to be in the mix. But
And suits Vanderpool.
I don't think that is Wout racing Paris Roubaix? I assume he is.
Absolutely,
Okay,
yes.
so if his form seems to be getting better, because I will say that I feel like it's getting better. Does this give? I mean, do you not say that he's in the mix next week? Like, I don't know. I just feel
Yeah,
like
I would say so. I mean, if you lay these two races over top of each other, well, no, if you take out the big climbs that we had today, which Paris Roubaix takes out the big climbs. It's got the cobbles, but it doesn't have the climbs. Is there separation? I mean, that's what made this race kind of great in kilometers like 60 through 15. There was the bunch was a part of the game, and there were small breakaway groups, and things were mixing and things were moving and fluid. So when you take out the climb, the separation happened at the climbs. That's when people got distance. So if you take that out,
it's a more
I
tactical race.
really, yeah, I expect there will be much more fluidity. Now, my guess will be that Pog will make a very early move, because that's one way to stay safe and stay in control in Paris-Roubaix, as we've discussed before, is to get yourself off the front with you by yourself or a very, very select group where you can minimize the possibility for some kind of externality to come in, a flat tire, whatever, a slippery
Obviously,
road.
that's the big leveling factor at Paris Roubaix, is that it's a much more difficult race on the body, on the bike, all of those different things. So his team, I think for him to win, his team has to have a better performance. He had no help today, outside of or inside of the last 30K. I mean, obviously his team had a couple of wrecks early in the race, but for him to be effective, I don't think he can do it by himself next week. I don't think that's how he wins that race. I think he wins it by himself in the finals, like in the final, maybe 15, but to be able to get the separation that he's going to need to win that race, he's going to need a teammate to help him make that move.
I disagree. I think if there's anything of a decent sized group with 15 Ks to go that Pog is a part of, this race becomes exceedingly difficult for him to win. He's not going to win this thing in a sprint on the velodrome. I mean, that's part of why Vanderpool, I think, has had success here, is that he can trust his sprint in the velodrome. Even though he has won solo, I think last year he won solo, but I know he's won in a sprint on that velodrome before, and I don't think Pog wins in that scenario for sure.
And I agree with you. I think he needs to get separation before they get to that point. And for him to be able to get that separation, I think he's going to need a teammate, because he's not going to have the hills to be able to make that separation happen, which means they're going to need a big acceleration to kind of launch him off.
I would agree. I just think it's going to come many more kilometers earlier. I mean, I just go back to, once again, when Lizzie Deignan won the inaugural edition on the women's side. And I believe she had shit weather that day as well. If we get bad weather, which we haven't really had much of in the spring classics so far this season.
I feel like it's coming though.
Some. But if it ends up bad weather, that's even more of an incentive for Pog to be out in front and to stay out in front. So, yeah, he's going to have to rely on his team to launch him. That's for sure. But Who knows?
Yeah. No.
Hopefully we get a better race next time around. All right, well, we'll leave it there. We got about 28 Ks of the women's race to watch. So we're going to do that now, and we will be back for segment 3 in a moment. Stay with us.
Don't miss the Team Bus, our weekly companion podcast to the main Beyond the Slipstream show. Our domestique, if you will, dropping every Wednesday in your usual podcast feed.
Please note, this segment contains spoilers. If you wish to remain unspoiled, jump ahead to the Broom Wagon or wait to listen until you've had a chance to watch the race. The women's Ronde von Vlaanderen, aka the Tour of Flanders, left out of Oudenaarde a few hours after the men rolled out of Bruges to start their day today, but the destination was the same: the Oude Quermont, the Paterberg, and the long straight finish back into Oudenaarde. After an unfortunate early abandon by top favorite Elisa Longa-Borghini of Team UAE ADQ, who won an emphatic victory at Dwars door Vlaanderen just 4 days ago and was set to make a big run at a title defense at Der Ronde, the race saw a large front group form with around 25 Ks to go, with many big names in the mix: Lotte Kopecky, Marianne Vos, Cassia Newedoma, Naomi Rugg, Chloe Dygert, Kim LaCour, Kat Ferguson, Leanna Lippert, Pauline Ferrand-Prévot, Puck Petersa, and Anna van der Breggen. But no sooner had this group started to cohere, the mighty Oude Quermont blasted it apart, with Kopecky, Lippert, Newedoma, and Ferrand-Prévot left out front as they headed into the Paterberg. The foursome remained intact after this final climb of the day, but their lead was tenuous, with a strong group behind working together to bring them back. With 5 Ks to go, they'd made their separation stick and headed into the finish to fight it out amongst themselves. Justin, we got an historic, if expected, win by Lotte Kopecky. Your thoughts, please.
It was a good win. I mean, I think after ELB went out early in the race, that it was her race to lose, and we got 2 world champions on the podium, at Tour of Flanders this year. So, I don't think it was wholly unexpected. I think, especially after all the work that she did for Lorena Wiebes in the previous weeks, that this was definitely her target and her race, and she gave the fans exactly what they wanted, and a world champion Belgian on the podium.
Yep. She was not going to be denied today, especially given her help for her high-flying teammate over the past couple of weeks. She sucked it up and played the team role, and they got the result they wanted in both of those instances. And this time they got the result they wanted, and she got the win that she wanted. Big, historic, 3 times in a row. Did it in the rainbow jerseys. I mean, that's one thing that can be said overall for this year's Tour of Flanders. We got some nice symmetry between the men's and the women's race. 2 all white clad world champions taking the win. I'm sure that'll be a cool photo to see the two of them side by side, raising their arms across the finish line. But yeah, once again,
I think it also is a statement for SD Works that they are the team to beat. Period.
Well, certainly in the classics, it's a statement. I would agree. I think the Grand Tour season might be a different thing, but for sure, 1-day races, classics, hard to argue with that. I mean, that's a 1-2 punch that you don't come across too often. Lorena Wiebes and Lotte Kopecky. I mean, an incredible sprinter, an incredible puncher. The 2 of them.
When they choose, take their mark, they're not missing. So it's pretty interesting, in that sense. Obviously, the women's race to me was, vastly more interesting because it did come down to the end there. I just, I look at those 4 riders, and it's just like I don't see any of them beating Kopecky, even on her worst day. You know what I mean? It didn't, Newedoma just didn't even have, anything there at the end. Ended up taking, 4th.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I was noticing, just like
speaking of Newadoma, like there was a couple of shots where, in that the final group of four, they were all rolling through and taking turns really, really well. I mean, they increased their lead in a short amount of time, and we're not going to get caught. They were all taking turns, but in the closing kilometers, Newadoma somehow ended up right behind Kopecky in the order on their little slipstream, and there was one shot I just happened to notice where it was like from behind, and you saw Newadoma a little bit closer to the camera, and then Kopecky, just off to her left in the shot. And I mean, the size of Kopecky's legs and just like hind quarters next to Newadoma's is ridiculous. I mean, it's just there's no chance. I mean, Newadoma did the only thing she could possibly hope to do, which is like hit a flyer. I think, but even then, it's just like there's that finish just does not allow any kind of variation in terms of terrain or anything where you can reasonably like get a good run at it. It's just pan flat, and I mean, so Kopecky covered her move like almost instantaneously. It never had a chance of winning. She ends up coming fourth, of course. Yeah, it was kind of a foregone conclusion. I think ELB doesn't crash out, and we could have had a very different race. I don't think ELB beats Kopecky in a sprint necessarily. Maybe,
but I think she could have gone.
probably not.
I think she could have done a Pogacar-like move.
Yes, she's wily, and she would have known that. She's already done it twice. Worked once, and it didn't twice recently. It's what she tried in an MSR. She almost pulled it off by like 5 seconds. She missed it. She made it stick big time in Dwars door. And you got to believe she would have done it here. And depending on what the makeup of the chase was, I mean, I certainly think Kopecky would have been much more keen to chase her down this time around, given the fact that she was racing for herself and that this is a big, big, big prize, and she was going for the triple, et cetera, et cetera. So, still, that said, I think it's a much different finish. If it's possibly a much different finish if ELB was there.
So what do you, obviously when we talked about the men's race, we brought up, next week at Paris-Roubaix, how do you think this lines us up with the women for Paris-Roubaix?
I think here it makes it look a lot more likely that Kopecky can win. I mean, I'm pretty sure she just like kind of bossed a sprint of like 6 people last year and won with authority when she could 2 bike lengths ahead last year or something when she won. Clearly in great form. She, has basically sort of slow built towards Holy Week, and the team's basically gotten all the results that they've wanted to get out of this time of year, and Roubaix is kind of the cherry on top of the Sunday, I would think. So hard to see anybody beating her. Who's going to beat her? I mean, now it is Roubaix, so you could end up with, there's always mishaps. There's always the X factor of the cobblestones and crashes and stuff.
You can have an Allison Jackson come out of nowhere and win. We've seen
it.
And we've seen it in recent years.
Yeah, and you could argue that Kopecky was in for the win that time too. She was just in that big group that got caught on that really narrow path where the crash went down on the very front, and they all stopped for like 30 seconds.
Yep.
And that was the difference in that race. So, but barring an incident like that, it's hard to say anybody's going to beat Kopecky.
It's interesting.
I think the men's race has a better chance of a compelling finish than the women's this year, but who knows?
It'll be very interesting. It's neat how these classics take shape in a very different way to these to these stage races, even these like 1 weekers that we've had already, this year, where we've had some really, really great racing early on in the spring here. It's interesting how these monuments, take shape throughout the day and, either give us kind of exactly what we're thinking, or, it's utter chaos and we don't know we don't know where it's going to go. And then sometimes we think we know exactly where it's going to go. And like on the men's side at Dwars this week, it could go completely haywire, even with a group of strong riders doing exactly what they want. So I don't know, man. It's been a great beginning to the season. You know, obviously we've had some pretty predictable wins, but we've also seen some greatness and some flashes. Pipo Ghana has been great. Puck Petersa has been great, and feel like she's been knocking on the door in a bunch of different places. So I don't know. I'm interested to see how the next few weeks unfold, because we got some really big racing coming up.
Yeah, yeah. On the women's side, there's definitely a number of names that could win in a number of different ways. I mean, Kopecky, Voss, they could both win in a sprint. Just survive to the finish, take it down to the sprint, and back yourself for the win. You, I could see a long solo breakaway from the likes of like Chloe Dygert, Pauline Ferrand-Prévot, even Anna van der Breggen.
She's looked really good.
Van der Breggen hasn't really had the chance to race this race. She's somebody that could definitely get off the front and make it stick. Puck Petersa has got the bike handling skills, and assuming she's there, she could certainly make something interesting happen. Liana Lippert could do something. I mean, there's Kat Ferguson even. She's been popping
and
off.
I don't think today suited Kat Ferguson very well, and I think that next week might suit her a lot better. It'll be interesting. She's one of those riders that I'm like constantly on the watch out for now, since we talked about her earlier this year. And, I think it's interesting how we really do from week to week with the women's side of it kind of wonder who's going to pop out and who's going to do something special today, because you really do get a lot more of the parity on the women's side right now than you do in the men's, depending on who's in there, obviously.
Agreed. And it's like, the parity lasts in many cases on the women's side, until once you get into the last 200 meters of the race. And then, if you've got Kopecky sprinting, if you've got
Wiebes.
Lorena Wiebes sprinting, parity is going to go out the window at that point. But up until then, and that's what we saw today in the women's ronde. I mean, it was super fun when that big group was together with like 20 Ks to go, and like every name in the race was like in there and mixing it up, and things were getting real fluid. Like, it was a lot of fun. And even when it whittled down to just those four, like, it kept things interesting. I mean, it started to seem like a foregone conclusion, but things could have happened.
Absolutely.
There. So it was a bit more fun to watch than the men's. But for me, at least, I walk away with just kind of like, okay, Tour of Flanders. Let's hope for the best for Paris-Roubaix.
It's interesting that we know that we've got these kind of maybe foregone conclusion races, and we look so forward to to it. I've been like I've been chomping at the bit all week to watch these races, and so look, I don't want to take it away from either of them. I think it's cool that we have two world champions on the podium at Tour of Flanders, and it's great to see a Belgian rider on the podium too. Give something for for those hardcore fans over there. So, I'm not going to say it was a total dud, but maybe a little snooze inducing.
Yeah, got some good drone footage.
Absolutely, the drone footage was definitely by far the best in this race to what we've seen all year.
Yeah, it was cool. Well, we will leave it there. Please stick around. We are about to take a ride in the Broom Wagon. All right, we are back. We're about to take a ride in the Broom Wagon. Justin, what do you have for us?
I wanted to throw out a show recommendation that my wife and I have been watching called The Pit. It's on Max. It is a medical drama, but it is unlike any medical drama that I've ever watched before. It's very visceral and real on a level that I have yet to see in a medical based drama. The show revolves around an ER in Pittsburgh, hence the Pit. And they call the emergency room the Pit as well. But basically, the way that it's set up is that it is a day in the life of this hospital's emergency room, and each episode goes hour by hour throughout the day. The cast is headed by Noah Weil, who was on ER for years. He is so good. I mean, so good. Like it's unreal how compelling his character is, but it is just this very, very realistic portrayal of emergency room medicine and the bureaucracy, that surrounds, how doctors can treat patients. It's very, very interesting. It's paced really well. It's done really well. The action of it is done just super well. The medical side of it is very precise. It's getting, tons of accolades for its realism. But absolutely, recommend the hell out of the show. It's so compelling.
Well, having not seen the show, I would like to strongly agree with everything you just said because I am well aware of this show. It's in the zeitgeist. It is on my short list of TV shows to watch. I heard an interview with Noah Wiley on WTF with Mark Maron. It was a phenomenal interview. Like, I love that guy after hearing that interview. Maron had the same reaction to the show as it seems like most critics that have watched it, which is just like, wow, holy crap, that is real. That thing gets real.
Yes.
So,
but it gets real in ways that it's like, yes, the medical side of it gets real, but it's like the characters and like what they go through and the way that it's, instead of it being a drama that's like unfolding over the course of a matter of time, because it's this microcosm, this one single day, they are allowed, they get this ability to tell like long form storytelling, but in this like amazingly short amount of time. So like you're getting character development, but it's like it's happening over the course of a matter of hours for you, in real time almost. And it's really crazy. One thing that I found out when I was doing a little like side research about the show is one of the main doctors in the show is Brad Dourif's daughter. Do you know who I'm talking about? Do you know who Brad Dourif is?
No.
Grima Wormtongue from Lord of the Rings.
Oh, right.
Great character actor. He was on Deadwood. He's been in a billion movies, but he's a guy that I absolutely love. His daughter is in the show, and I had no idea until I was doing the research, and I was like, I saw the last name, I'm like, there's no way that's not his kid, and it is. But just really, really great show. Highly recommend it. You will not be bored. I can tell you that. And it's not for the faint. It's not for if you don't like the sight of blood, you might want to stay away.
Yeah, that's what I heard. That's what I heard about it. It's so funny the way so many of these celebrities' kids are starting to bubble to the surface. You know whose daughter is like an incredible actor? Bono. Bono's kid, Eve Hewson. She is amazing. She was in this movie called something and Son, like Marta and Son or something like that, about this like Irish woman and her son who's like a fuck up in school. It's just one of the most feel good movies I've seen in a couple of years. I absolutely adored this movie and I adored her performance. Funny to see how that's starting to happen.
Well,
all right.
I just watched one last night with a movie last night with not Randy Quaid, but Dennis Quaid's son Jack Quaid, who was really good. So anyway, maybe we'll do a segment on
Nepo babies.
Yeah, Nepo baby actors. I would love that. Okay. All right.
It has
So
to be
what
like
do you
Nepo babies that are actually walking the walk. You know what I mean? That are actually good.
Yeah. The good and the bad, maybe. What do you got today?
Okay, after a couple of weeks afield making some bizarre Broom Wagon recommendations and
getting up on my soapbox, etc. I'm going to go much more pedestrian this week. I'm going to recommend a documentary that I just saw, a documentary film that I just saw. It's called Secret Mall Apartment. It's a documentary by a director named Jeremy Workman. If you've not heard about this thing, it's a documentary about a collective of artists in Providence, Rhode Island, back in the early 90s who had been sort of eminent domained out of their where they were kind of living in this warehouse district in this like dilapidated area of Providence that, used to be a hub of manufacturing. But then, once everything got moved to China and NAFTA'd away, like it turned into a derelict, section of town, just like so many cities have. And there were all these artists over there living in these like, warehouse spaces and et cetera, et cetera. And they built this mall in Providence. And one of the artists was sort of like, he was either living or working someplace where he was able to kind of keep a close eye on the construction of this mall. And he had noted somewhere along the way that there was like sort of this space that was kind of in the middle of the mall before it was fully built. You could see to where the insides were and how things were happening. There was like this space that like seemed unaccounted for. And after they got the thing finished, some of these artists like kind of did a little digging and figured out, there's definitely like a space inside this mall that's like locked between all these other spaces that does not appear to be being used at all. And they figured out a way to access it through the inside of the mall. And later they actually found an access point from outside the mall so that they get into this space and be in there and be unknown. Like nobody knew they were in there. And they decided as sort of like an art project and a means of protesting the sort of gentrification of some of these areas in Providence that they were going to like make an apartment inside this thing. And they did. They made an apartment in there with like sofas and credenzas and desks and kitchen tables. No actual running water, but they had like, waffle irons and stuff in there. But they had this thing going for 4 years. 4 years they had this. They were coming and going. They built a wall inside this thing because there was one spot where if like a would-be intruder kind of climbed up this super steep ladder at the back end of some storage area in the mall, they climbed up to that and looked, they would actually see it. So they were like really worried about that. And so they built a wall. They literally smuggled in like a couple hundred cinder blocks and bags of concrete to build a wall. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. But the real beauty in this doc is learning about the artists themselves, because most of them are there as talking heads, and the main guy in the group is a guy named Michael Townsend. I am so inspired by this guy. He is living a life as a true artist, like to the bone. In his DNA, this guy is an artist, and his beliefs in art and what personal expression and free creative expression are just super inspiring to me. He's a philanthropist. He's an altruist. He gives back to his community in incredible ways. He's just a beautiful person that's not obsessed with money or fame or status or anything else. Really inspiring. So I don't believe this thing is available on any service right now that I can find. I watched it on the pirate movie site, but I'm sure you won't forget about this title. Just when you come across that thing about the secret apartment in the mall, that's the thing. There's nothing else like it. Watch it. It's good. It's really inspiring. Kind of a fascinating little tale and well made as well.
I definitely remember that story. Like I definitely remember them when they finally, discovered it. I remember that.
Yeah, and I have to say the one of the cool things about it is that these guys had like a little handheld, like a little camera, a little digital camera that were just starting to come onto the scene back then. Remember, this is like the early 90s. But it had a video feature on it. And of course, it's a bunch of artists or whatever. So they were like rolling footage nonstop throughout this entire time. So there is a ton of old footage that they got. And I got to say, as crazy as this sounds, I mean, it was the 90s or whatever, but it's got a look to it. It's got a vintage 90s look to it, that old footage that is kind of cool, man. It's like back around to looking like kind of cool, because when they're cutting to some old footage versus like new stuff, it's very apparent. So
I'm very interested to see this.
Yeah, it's really cool. So big recommendation there. All right. Well, we're going to We're going to cap it off there. That is all for this week. Join us next week for coverage of the Itzulia Basque Country stage race in the climber's paradise of northern Spain. And of course, full reviews of the meanest monument of them all, Paris-Roubaix. Until then, for my brother Justin, I'm Matt Harper. Thanks for listening. We hope you'll join us again soon on another ride beyond the slipstream. Allez! Beyond the Slipstream is a production of Harperama. Find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Please like and subscribe, smash that button, leave a 5-star review, and most importantly, tell all your friends about us. Thanks for listening. Talk to you next time. Allez!